Dear guests, thank you for attending for our panel discussion on Space 2030, Policies and Strategies, the Global Space Economy. This is the second panel of the Congress and the last panel of the day. We stay committed to our promise to bring the region to IAC. So please welcome our panelists. We have interesting panelists all representing government space programs in our region and all with diverse backgrounds. Let me present our distinguished panelists. Mr. Samettin Asadov, Chairman of the Board of Azercosmos, Space Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan. With background and experience in finance, he served as CFO at Azercosmos since its establishment. Mr. Serdar Hüseyin Yıldırım, President of the Space Agency of Turkey. With background in aeronautical engineering, he taught airline operations management courses. He served as a chairman of the board and general director at the State Airports Authority. Mr. Uri Oron, director of the Israel Space Agency. He is former fighter pilot with command and operational experience of over 32 years. He managed operations in an Israeli artificial intelligence startup. And Mr. Malik Olzabekov, Vice Minister of Digital Development, Innovations and Aerospace Industry of the Republic of Kazakhstan. His background in public administration, he was involved in space more than 10 years. He served as an executive at the Republican Center for Space Communications and then deputy chairman at the Aerospace Committee. Please greet our panelists. Considering that our panel has started lately today, and later we have very interesting and delightful welcome reception, we will try to complete this panel earlier and be a little bit shorter. So, today, many countries in the world are implementing space programs. According to a report from Euroconsult, we see that the space economy grew and reached $424 billion in 2022. Dozens of countries have registered a satellite in orbit and or created a space agency in the last 2 decades. What is the reason of such great interest? Mr. Asadov.
Thank you. Well, in fact, I do believe that this is a very positive fact. The more we invest in space, the less we invest in weapons and the military activities. And I see probably 3 key factors of this. The first one would be the advancements of the technology, which made space program accessible and cost-effective. The small satellites, effectiveness of the satellites, the launch capabilities, and as well as better communication systems eliminated barriers for countries to access the space and give them entry to this industry. My second idea would be the security reason, because nowadays space is playing more incremental factor in the country's security and defense policies. Most of the countries use telecommunication satellites, Earth observation satellites, surveillance for different purposes and early warning systems. So that's why this also increases the government interest into the space programs. And the last idea would be the international cooperation and awareness. I do believe that the international programs like ISS or James Webb have showed to the entire humanity that how countries can work together, create synergies, and get benefits of that programs, as well as the awareness of space and technologies is making a lot of interest, creating interest for the governments of different countries to invest in space. So as I said, it is very good, and I do really think that our future is related to the space, and more countries investing in space, it is better for the humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van.
Yeah, good afternoon, or actually it's an evening. What I would like to take the opportunity to thank you, the Cosmos, Azerbaijan, and the IF to arrange this amazing conference, which I think is a great follow-up for other conferences, but that's unique in its own way. So thanks very much. Going back to your question, I think the main reasons, first of all, is a huge technological acceleration that happened in the last, let's say, 2 decades or so, that without this technological acceleration, we won't be here today discussing such a huge change. We can see that in the reduction of launch cost. All of us knows and feel it with our cell phones when we understand the meaning of miniaturization. Everything gets smaller, everything gets cheaper, and the fact that we can reach space much easily and I will not say cheap, but less expensive than it used to be, just open a huge window for companies as well as for countries. So the main reason, go back to technology. That's the main reason. But there's other reasons, and I think you highlight some of those. Interest of countries. Space become a vital part of the national interest. You cannot live in a modern country without access to space. You cannot have a real economy, modern economy, with access to space, without access to space. So that's another reason. Another reason that will get more and more important, I think, is space open window to answer scientific questions that was not there before. So it's not only money, it's not only national interest, it also brings science. Last but not least, space, because of those reasons, is an area for cooperation. So when you're asking why is this huge change, I think those are the main factors. But it goes back to technology. Without the technology acceleration that we experienced in the last 2 decades, we won't be here today. What we need to do is to use it correctly.
Thank you. Mr. Ozabekov.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, the organizers, for inviting us and giving us chance to speak today. As for the question you've actually raised, we do believe that most of the space technologies became commercially more attractive now, since most of the services we use in a day-to-day life, even within our smartphone, are based on the space technologies like the satellite navigation, satellite mapping, satellite communication. So it's became very important part of our everyday life, and that actually pushes the demand upwards. And now there is a time, there is a right time for the new companies to come to the market. This is the one reason. The second one, as my colleague already told, that the technologies due to rising competition became more affordable, I guess. And then you can just compare the cost of launch a decade ago and now. It drops 2 and 3 times maybe. The space became more affordable. The satellite technologies are moving the trend of mini satellites. Most of the technological barriers are not there now on the market. So it's the warm and comfortable environment for the new companies and new agencies to invest in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Yildirim?
Yes, thank you, Dunay. The answer is very easy because the space is the future, and future is space. We are now in a new space age, for sure, and every system which operates globally must go to space now, and they are going up. Without space, we cannot speak about sustainability on Earth. Something sometimes is not very well understood, I think. Space sciences are not only for space, also for Earth, for the problems of Earth. We can solve the problems of Earth from space much more easily. And that is maybe one of the most important reasons that many countries, many nations are now interested being in space and investing in space, exploring space, including emerging countries. And I think the second point I want to mention is the economic dimension, I would say. You mentioned 400 billion something, but it is growing exponentially. I sincerely believe, personally believe that before end of this decade, we will see $1 trillion. I believe it. So there are many applications using from space. For example, Internet of Things, IoT. IoT is not a new technology. We know what it is, and it is there maybe for decades, but it is not possible to do it sustainably terrestrial systems. It must be done from space. So this is only an example. The other space applications, which are already in our daily lives and making our daily lives easier and safer, all these systems need space. So to cut it short, without space, there is no future. We can say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before going to the next question, I would like to ask if there is any question in auditorium. Not yet. Okay, as you mentioned, space becomes more available and more services is used by billions of people basically now using the space assets, which means there is growing commercial interest in space. So, and as mentioned by Mr. Yildirim, the projected income by 2030 will be more than $1 billion. And so how challenging will it be to finance the necessary flagship projects under Space Vision 2030, in particular for your space programs? And what are the two key aspects of the national approach to space economy and development?
Well, in fact, I personally believe that governments is and will be the main source of the budget for the space programs. And it's good, I think. The space is all about the taxpayers' money. That's the reality. And of course, in the recent years, the success of private companies has increased the portion of the private investment into the space sector, but we also need to understand that there are both direct and indirect investment from the governments to the space. So in this reality, in this system, mostly the government-funded space programs or space agencies have to compete for the budget allocations with different sectors. The governments are having lots of different priorities, and the politics also are there. That's why I really believe that The role of IEF as well as the impact of these congresses are crucial for the governments, for the politicians to be aware or make them aware how space is important for their population. From that point of view, we as Azerbaijan Space Agency are working with our government as well as with international stakeholders to bring and get funds for different space projects. For this, of course, we have to have a very solid legal framework. This year, Azerbaijan has adopted the law of space activities, which is quite a comprehensive document based on best practices. As well as we also try to engage private business in Azerbaijan, and our goal is share the technology and do some capacity building activities in Azerbaijan and foster the ecosystem, space ecosystem, both universities, institutions, R&D, private and government all together. So that's the two key factors that we are thinking forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to follow the line?
Yes, please.
So I think budget will always be a challenge. You can put NASA administrator on one hand, and you can put other on the other hand. Budget will always be a challenge. Doesn't matter what is your budget. It is always you're always lacking of budget. So it is a challenge always. But I think the key factor probably going to lies, at least in my perspective, in two areas. One is the value. From the nation perspective, space must bring value to the national interest. Now, it could be what it used to be, very related to security and defense, but I think nowadays, and it's been mentioned, nowadays interest lies in other places, and value could be relevant to other places which are not only security and defense. Just to see the importance of space to monitor the environment and the effect on the environment. You can see in other places that space could bring value to nation in other places. But once you be able to point at those places of value to the nation, then budget become a little bit less of a challenge and more of an opportunity. So value to the nation is a key factor. The second factor, I think, is partnership. Partnership within the government, within the state entities, and between nations. And space is an area that is relatively easy to cooperate and partner. So in that regard, I think those two key factors will make it less of a challenge and more of an opportunity. So again, partnership and value to the nation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, finding the rising finance to invest in the space-related assets always been challenging. I mean, for the past 1.5 decades, our government invested about $1 billion to the space-related assets, to the satellites and other technological stuff. And now we actually believe that it's better than, rising the capital expenditures is better than moving towards the service model, towards the operational expenditures to pay for the services. And the market, through the competition, will find the most effective way to provide the services. So we hit two goals with that. We have the better quality of service from the market, from the commercial companies. And we had, the cost-effective solution. So that's the approach that we are moving towards, decreasing the capex expenditures, providing more OpEx expenditures, leaving the room for the capex for the private companies, and provide sustainable, like government will still remain one of the key customer on the market, with having some sustainable support to the market. Yeah, so that's all.
Thank you.
So, budget is always important, of course, because resources are limited. I want to give an example from Turkey. End of last year, we negotiated our Turkish Space Agency's budget with our government. And it was a hard negotiation, of course, and we allocated some resources for this year, for 2023. But in February, we had a great, huge earthquake in Turkey. We lost 50,000 people. It was a great disaster. So there was a need to reallocate the resources. This is always problematic. We all know that space exploration, space endeavors are always expensive, risky, and takes a long time. But of course there are solutions for that. We can find solutions. Because of this, I especially underline in every international meeting that the international collaboration is a key factor for that, which the Federation is a very good network for that. Because I am in touch with many space agencies all over the world, and I see that the emerging nations, when we see the spacefaring nations an exception and put aside, other nations, mostly emerging nations, are trying to do similar projects. Why not join forces and do them together? I am always underlining it, and I am pushing it. So we should act like that. We should join our forces, and we will win. Technologically, it is then much easier, time-wise, much quicker, and much cheaper when we share the costs, of course. This is one important point. And at last, I want to add, we shouldn't forget that. As Yuri said, the space exploration was meant always scientific experiments making in space, etc., till new age. But now, there comes space manufacturing, there comes space mining, etc. So there will be also returns, commercial activities in space. So investing in space, yes, we will spend some money, but there will be also returns. And I imagine these returns can be also huge if it is very well told and applied. So I think these factors are important for the budget and we must consider it, but the collaboration is a key factor for win-win projects. Thank you.
Thank you. As you mentioned, a lot of different applications is space used now, like to work, to grow food, to conduct research on medical research, to mine, explore, and etc. And all of these are happening now. And obviously, the main source of budget is currently government, especially for space programs. And but there is also an increase in state-backed investment in space projects, according to the Space Foundation report. So, besides the budget, legal framework, the international relations, and exciting scientific projects, what role do you see the government playing now, and how it will evaluate for 2030? So what will be the role of government in 7 years, in 10 years?
Well, for the Azerbaijan government, we have developed a new strategy for up to 2030. For the last 10 years, for the last decade, we invested to the space about 600 million US dollars. But in the coming 7 years, we will invest not less than that. For example, today we have signed an agreement with Israel aerospace industry for purchasing 2 Earth observation satellites. We have partnered with IAI, and those Earth observation satellites will be a continuation of Azerbaijan Earth observation program, as well as will create the local capabilities of manufacturing later Earth observation satellites in the country. And by that, we also will support and foster the local industry so that they get some sort of space technology and knowledge to develop their own ideas. As well as in the coming years, we plan to launch telecommunication satellites to continue our services over our region. So from that point of view, I really believe that the money spent on the space should not be considered as an expenditure, but it brings doubled or tripled benefits to the country. We all know that for now 60 years, the roots of innovation is mostly coming on one side from the universities, R&D centers and institutions, but on the other side, the roots of the innovation is closely related to the defense and space expenditures of the governments. So the money invested in these areas really brings tripled revenues. We all use the internet, we all use the navigation systems, and companies engaged in this earns billions of dollars now. So from that point of view, Azerbaijan government will continue to invest in the space programs, and hopefully by after the 2030, we will also think about the deep space, about the lunar exploration and Mars exploration and interplanetary activities. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think I will just follow up what my colleague here says. But although we are in a time of huge changes in space, the role of the government is still a key factor in every nation, I believe. But this specific role is a little bit changed. I think the first thing that government, at least from my perspective, need to do is to provide a very solid strategy. Where are you heading, or where we're heading as a nation regarding to space? Sometimes it's not easy, but when you're able to define such a strategy, that's very, very important. And without a strategy, sometimes you can get lost. So I think providing a national strategy to space, and I'm using the word national because it must be national. It cannot be only commercial or only defense or any other. It must be a national. A national strategy will basically should define not only the goals, but it should define the tools that you're going to use as a nation. So I think the first one, the first role of the government is to provide the right strategy. The second role is, I think it goes back to the previous panel. Government will be clients, has been mentioned, for the space industry, but what they must do is to provide to reduce the risks from the private entrepreneurs. We want those private entrepreneurs to go inside. We want the private money to be part of the ecosystem, but the government must reduce the risk. How? There is many ways. You can be a client. You can use other tools, but the government must reduce those risks in order to make the ecosystem flourish. Another role of the government is to use space, just to use space for their own value. I mentioned it in the previous question, but I think when the government use space to bring value to their own needs, they basically, first of all, they get answers to their questions, but they, again, make the ecosystem flourish. And another role of the government, because in space you can partner, you can cooperate with others, is to build the right framework for cooperation. Maybe sometimes the cooperation will be between businesses. Maybe it will be between government and businesses, and you just mentioned the agreement between Azerbaijan and IAI, and you need to build the right framework, and that's the work of the government. Not necessarily all the time only space agencies, but without the role of the government, the framework won't be there, and if the framework won't be there, we won't be able to put stuff and things into a relevant framework. So building the framework, reducing risk, but I think the most important thing is to provide a coherent strategy. That is the role of the government.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with the previous speakers about the role of the government being as one of the key customers in the market that will rise some sustainability, sustainable demand on the market, on the space-related markets. But during the previous session, there was an interesting statement about the regulation. One speaker mentioned that it's better having the regulation than the gap within the legal framework, and then the other speaker said that even more better is to have good regulations than just to have regulations. So the government definitely and obviously will be playing the key role in the regulation by creating the right environment to startups growing, which is very important, His Excellency said about the intergovernmental, maybe international cooperation. So the bridge between the nations gonna build the governments, those comfortable environment among the countries in the world, because I mean, joining the investments and efforts will do the better results. Yeah, thank you.
So I think governments, of course, leading and pioneering all the space activities and endeavors, and this should somehow continue. But I think the role of the governments are changing and should change, because it's a new space age, and governments should exit from the space areas which private sector can do these things by themselves. This is important because there are many other aspects now the governments should take care of. For example, now we all know that in Earth orbit we have more than 8,000 satellites, and it's exponentially growing. Now we are talking about space management system, like air management, air traffic management, space traffic management, so to avoid the collisions, etc. And there is security aspects also, which the state, governmental institutions should take care of. So the commercial side, and maybe also the scientific side, should be left to academia and the commercial private sector, and government maybe can support them if needed, but government institutions shouldn't do it. They should exit from these areas and focus on much more needed other areas, which are new now, new space age and new things. In very short time, we will see 50,000 satellites in the orbit. So this can be a huge disaster if not well managed and very well coordinated. intergovernmentally also. And there is coming the space law, which we lack now. We don't have law. We don't know where space begins. Of course, there is something 100 kilometers, but it's only an acceptance. It is not a legal issue. So there are many things that governments should do, but I think commercial side and scientific side should be left to private sector and academia. Thank you.
Thank you. It was well noted that we can build more and more, but we also should care about the sustainability of that. And this week we will have a lot of discussions based on the sustainability of space with a growing number of their satellites. I wonder if there is any questions in our auditorium for our speakers. Yes, please. Uri, you still have to respond, okay?
Thank you so much for all your speakings. My name is Gandab. I'm a high school student. I want to give you a question. We know partnership is crucial not only among nations, but also network is essential in one particular country in order to overcome problems and provide improvement in space exploration. But for this, firstly, we need to increase awareness. So my question is, what are the steps governments take or can plan to take in the future to increase awareness?
What are the steps to increase awareness? Shortly.
To whom is that question?
You mean to avoid collision, or I'm confused?
No, only like increasing partnerships or increasing partnership in one particular country, like governments, what steps governments can take in order to increase awareness to provide these corporations, general.
Yes, please.
Yes, in Turkey, for example, the space awareness, raising the space awareness is one of the main goals of our national space program. Because without this space awareness, we cannot achieve our goals. We need support of all the population. The space activities are for everyone, not for an institution or the space agency. So what we are doing, of course, every institution has its duties on that, starting with the media, because if media doesn't realize what the space means and what is the importance of new space age, it is very difficult to explain everything. But, for example, I personally, as the president of Turkish Space Agency, visit every week a university, an institution, and tell that there and answer them their questions about space, what is going on in space, and try to raise the awareness. And in every opportunity, also I use the media, social media and classical conventional media to improve that awareness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in Kazakhstan, what we usually do is we cooperate with the universities. Besides, having the standards like open day, when every student can come to the production site, to the manufacturing site, to the ground control station, and receive more information about the operations they are doing. We do actually have a closer ties with the universities. Some certain branches of universities are opened based on our, let's say, the national operator of satellite communication, the same branch we have of other university based on our manufacturing facility of the satellites, so that students can come and touch in the practice the operations, during the educational procedures. Yeah.
You have any?
Well, at least in Israel, awareness and education and outreach is extremely important, and it's one of the main areas of operation that we are doing in the space agency. We are focusing our effort towards high school, but not only to them. But the good thing is that we are not alone in this area, and that's very, very promising. There is other entities in Israel that understand the potential of space, and they are very active. I can give you just a highlight of the names: the Rakia Mission and Ramon Foundation. So we are not alone there. But the goal of everyone is basically to have a much broader awareness to the potential of space. It starts in relatively low ages, but it goes all the way back, all the way on to university. Just to highlight two very important plans that we have. One is the Space Olympics that brings more than 10,000 kids all year doing things regarding to space. Another one that is very, very unique is what we call the TEVEL program, students building satellites. We launch on January 2022, 8 nanosatellites. Each one of those was built by a different community, high school, different school. It's a program that basically aimed towards the 10th and 11th grade, two-year program. By the end of the year, a group of 25 kids building nanosatellites and launch it to space. Just imagine the impact on those 25, and they could be girls, they could be boys, they could be religious, they could be secular, they could be in the Israeli terms Arab or Jews. You don't care. What you can see is the impact of such a program to those kids, to those teachers, to their teachers, to the family, and to the whole community. So basically, we are using space, in the good term, we are using space to attract young kids toward science, toward technology. And in that regard, I think it's a very, very important and successful program.
Well, noting the ideas of the speakers, I would like to only emphasize the role of international organizations such as IEF and their partners, bringing this type of events to different countries, to different regions, so that youngsters like you can interact with companies, agencies, and at the end of the day, increase the awareness. So I want to just thank the IEF to give us the honor to have this 74th chapter of IEC to be in Baku City. Thanks.
Thank you very much. One more question?
Yeah, one question. Just.
Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, just one question. So you mentioned sustainability, you mentioned international, you mentioned awareness. We have had a proposal to the United Nations to have a new sustainable development goal. Space is not part of the 17 sustainable development goals. Why is that? Because space is so necessary now in our everyday life. It will be also necessary to our expansion, even global space economy beyond Earth. So I would see, what would you think about having a space for all on Earth and beyond as an 18 sustainable development goal, like Space Renaissance International, our foundation, and 60 other foundations have been proposing to the United Nations?
Okay. Space sustainability as a 18th goal of United Nations. What do you think? Great question.
Well,
I liked it.
in fact, I would love to have that. But on the other side, my just personal idea is that among of all 70 SDGs, space is tackling problem all of them. So from my point of view, space is in there and given lots of opportunities to tackle all development goals. If we just derive and all of this and to put separate. At the end of the day, my understanding it will not, change a lot. So countries use space technologies, the data from space, to address the challenges, whether it is climate change, whether it is poverty, water management. That's why my perception is that space is already there. Thanks.
Any ideas?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. There was a question.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dunay, and all the chairmen for this distinguished panel to enlighten us. So when we say global space economy, we have the agencies like you to create the strategies for the countries, and we have also the commercial space sector. So, and we are going through the commercialization, such as if we think the ISS, it will be commercialized, and now it's operated by the space agencies. So what is your insight to merge with the global space economy and the commercialization? So how we can manage that in the future? Please.
This is a delicate topic because till now we have very good cooperation in space. And best example is ISS. In ISS, many space agencies and countries working together, but mainly on scientific field. When something commercial comes in play, then of course there will be some conflict of interests. This is, I think, this is my idea, could be a threat for even the world peace and the peace in space. So the commercialization is very important aspect and should be very well managed, very well coordinated intergovernmentally, as I said before. And of course we need global institutions who would follow it, who would regulate it, etc. These are very important aspects. Otherwise, I'm afraid it should be a disaster because there are some scenarios that could happen in space, a domino effect of some unexpected and unwanted procedures. So I don't want to mention that because we want to be always positive. But generally, commercialization is very important and going on already and growing exponentially. Everyone on Earth can benefit from space economy if well regulated, or also harmed from that one. So this is a very delicate issue and well adjusted, I mean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, one more question.
Hannah Pinard from Houston, Texas. Thank you very much for answering our questions. The previous question I thought was very good, and it kind of stimulated a question in my mind. And that is on this, in the global space economy, because, what is a similar terrestrial governing body or mechanism that we have? And I can only think of GATT and maybe the World Trade Organization as far as regulating commerce on Earth. And this question is for all 5 of you and any ideas that you might have for the future, to put a positive spin on it, like as the gentleman from Turkey was saying earlier. Do you envision possibly a mechanism internationally to regulate the global space economy and maybe international trade in space, and maybe if disputes arrive, would there be a dispute settlement mechanism possibly in the future?
if you could shortly just repeat the last part, the most important part, just to make sure that...
As far as the global space economy and maybe international trade in space, to put, a positive futuristic spin on it, would be where do each of the five of you envision the future in space as far as trade, commerce in space? Because obviously it's growing, as you mentioned just a while ago, exponentially. The disputes will arise in the future. Do you envision maybe an international regulatory body similar to GATT or the World Trade Organization to regulate the money, the economic sides of it, and also maybe having a dispute settlement mechanism similar to GATT? And what I mean by GATT is there. And the general agreement on tariffs and trades.
Yeah, I think that since a lot of new technologies and way we actually do develop the technologies, let's say the mining on the asteroids, needs to initiate some maybe changes in the way we regulate internationally. And examples, there are a lot of examples that the new coming emerging initiatives needs to be, regulated, because I do agree with you maybe in the case that we're somewhere behind with the regulations, because it deals with the regulations on the nations level, several nations level, the globally, which is quite challenging, to have, to agree on a certain point on this. But it's very important. I don't think that the dedicated organization is needed in that case, because we already have a basement, on UN side, on the regional side. And it's not about having the dedicated organizations. It's having the right network among the nations to raise the issue, to address the issue, and find the right, regulatory acts on the global level. Thank you.
I would just add just a few quick comments. As long as technology will continue, and as long as the opportunity will arise, especially commercial opportunities, eventually the regulation must be there, because otherwise it will be a competition, and probably it's going to be a very bad and nasty competition. So regulations got to be there. What is the mechanism? I believe it will be more of a evolution and not a revolution, meaning that we're probably going to use the same mechanism as we've done as humanity in the past. But I believe we are towards more regulation, because without the regulation, the competition will kill us.
Thank you. I think for today, okay. One last question, and maybe only few responses. Okay, maybe one.
Thank you, dear panelists, for the opportunity to ask the question. My name is Ruslan Kanygin, Roden University, Moscow, Russia. And you've already mentioned about the sustainability in the space and the global space economy. So according to the Union Scientists, there is on orbits more than 4,000 of active satellites. And have you got in your countries any policies or initiatives in space navigation or space traffic management? Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
So, if there is any policy to cover the
space traffic management,
sustainable, with increasing number of satellites, are there any policy government to cover sustainability?
Well, from my point of view, this should be, as my colleagues told, this is probably the mandate of the UN to have this overall mechanisms. But of course, there are several treaties in the world, and as Space Agency of Azerbaijan, we have acknowledged that, and we are kind of approving that. That's why the peaceful use of the space and as well as the sustainability is somehow touched in our space policies as well as the law. But overall, I do agree that there is a strong need for this worldwide regulation regarding space management, traffic, etc. And we are eagerly awaiting this regulation.
Okay. Mr. Ozubek.
Yeah, it's maybe one of the most important topic that actually were, discussed and argued on the UN platform, because the recently rising number of LEO satellites makes this topic even more hot. And what I do know, actually, the nations are trying to draft the agreement on to put the right legal framework to that issue, but not succeed yet. But the good thing is, the more satellites on the LEO orbit, we know that the Elon Musk's the Starlink constellation, it's about, I guess, 5,000 satellites in the orbit. Now the Bezos, it's about to launch with another 10,000 of the satellites. So at the certain point, we will definitely find the way to regulate. And we're discussing, there are good and bright ideas already there, how to solve that. And I do believe, I'm an optimistic. I do believe that we will find the ways to regulate. But still, at the moment, we do receive, those operators are operating the satellites on the orbit, well aware that we do receive some awareness, the notification from the Space Center from US about the possible close approach or collision notification. So at this stage, it's helpful to avoid the collision, and hopefully we will do that until we will find the right regulatory document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to, on that, conclude our panel today. Thank you very much to our panelists for joining, for interesting discussion. And thank you everyone in auditorium. We look forward to see you on our next plenaries and join our program, interesting program we developed for the rest of the IAC until the closing ceremony. And with that, we are all invited to our welcome reception.